The morning sun cast long shadows across Miami Beach as Margot Robbie strolled along the shoreline, seeking a moment of solitude after months of relentless Barbie press tours. She'd deliberately chosen this early hour, when the beach was typically deserted save for a few dedicated joggers and the occasional seabird. Dressed in a flowing white linen dress and wide-brimmed hat, an outfit that would later prove remarkably fortuitous, she walked barefoot, letting the cool water lap at her ankles. The sound of distant laughter caught her attention. Through the morning haze, she could make out what appeared to be a small gathering near one of the beachfront hotels. White chairs were arranged in neat rows on the sand, and flowers adorned a simple wooden arch. It was clearly a wedding setup, but something seemed off. The atmosphere felt tense rather than celebratory. As Margot drew closer, she could hear fragments of worried conversations. "What do you mean she's not coming? The wedding starts in an hour. How are we supposed to handle this?" Curiosity got the better of her, and she found herself drifting toward the commotion. A young woman in a bridesmaid's dress was speaking frantically into her phone while simultaneously trying to comfort the bride, who sat on a decorated chair, mascara running down her cheeks. The wedding coordinator had apparently suffered a severe allergic reaction and was now en route to the hospital. This wasn't just any coordinator, she'd been meant to serve as the ceremony's host and MC, a role particularly important in this case as neither the bride nor groom had family members comfortable speaking English. Margot hesitated for a moment, watching the scene unfold. She could easily continue her walk, leaving this drama behind. But something about the bride's expression, a mixture of hope and despair that she'd seen reflected in so many faces during her own journey to success, made her pause. Before she could second-guess herself, she was approached by one of the bridesmaids, who did a double take at her appearance. The young woman's eyes widened with recognition, but not the kind Margot was used to. "Oh my God, are you one of the Barbie event coordinators? The hotel mentioned they might send someone from the convention." Margot opened her mouth to correct the misunderstanding, but then she saw the bride's face brighten ever so slightly at the prospect of help arriving. A voice in her head, one that sounded suspiciously like her Barbie character, whispered, "Sometimes the best roles are the ones we never auditioned for." Instead of explaining who she was, Margot found herself saying, "I heard you might need some assistance with today's celebrations." The words came out in the warm, professional tone she'd perfected through countless interviews and public appearances. The bridesmaid practically sagged with relief. "You have no idea how grateful we are. Everyone's been so stressed since Amanda, our coordinator, had her allergic reaction." "Do you have experience hosting weddings?" Margot thought about all the scripts she'd memorized, all the events she'd hosted, all the crowds she'd worked. A wedding couldn't be that different from a movie premiere, could it? "Let's just say I'm comfortable in front of an audience," she replied with a reassuring smile. "Why don't you tell me about the couple and what you had planned?" As the bridesmaid began explaining the situation, Margot pulled out her phone and started taking notes, her actor's mind already blocking out the ceremony like a scene. She had no idea that this impromptu decision would lead to one of the most memorable weddings Miami Beach had ever witnessed, and a story that would eventually capture hearts around the world. What she did know was that for the next few hours, she wasn't going to be Margot Robbie, movie star. She was going to be whatever this bride and groom needed her to be. After all, if there was one thing her career had taught her, it was that sometimes the most magical moments happen when you step completely out of your comfort zone and into someone else's story. Within minutes of agreeing to help, Margot found herself in the thick of wedding chaos. The bride, Elena, was from Argentina, and the groom, James, was from New Zealand. Their love story had blossomed in Miami, where they both worked as marine biologists. The guest list was a beautiful mix of cultures, with family and friends from 3 continents, many of whom didn't speak each other's languages. The original plan was for Amanda to translate and guide everyone through the ceremony, explained Sophia, the bridesmaid who'd first approached Margot. "She speaks Spanish and English, and we had another translator for James's family who speak Maori." Margot's mind raced. She'd picked up decent Spanish during her time filming various projects, and while she couldn't speak Maori, she had worked with New Zealand crews before. She understood the importance of cultural sensitivity and inclusion. More importantly, she knew how to command a room's attention and rate an audience. As she reviewed the ceremony schedule, she noticed the wedding was meant to incorporate traditions from both families. There was a planned ritual with braided flax from New Zealand, traditional Argentine tango music for the first dance, and a bilingual sand ceremony. It was ambitious even for an experienced coordinator, let alone someone stepping in last minute. But Margot had faced tougher challenges. She'd performed Shakespeare on camera, mastered complex choreography for Birds of Prey, and learned to ice skate like a professional 4i, Tanya. Compared to those feats, how hard could hosting a wedding be? She began by gathering the wedding party together, her natural leadership abilities shining through. "Okay, everyone, here's what we're going to do," she announced, channeling the confidence of Barbie mixed with the strategic thinking of Nellie Leroy from Babylon. "First, we need to create a sense of unity despite the language barriers. Music and gestures are universal, we'll use them to our advantage." The bride's tear-stained face had given way to cautious hope as Margot detailed her plan. They would begin with a moment of silence, allowing everyone to center themselves. Then, instead of trying to translate every single word, they would focus on key phrases and emotions, using body language and facial expressions to convey meaning. "Trust me," Margot said, her eyes twinkling with determination, "by the end of this ceremony, everyone will understand what's happening, even if they don't understand every word." As she spoke, she noticed a small girl, probably around 6 years old, peeking out from behind one of the flower arrangements. It was Elena's niece, Maria, who was supposed to be the flower girl but had become too shy to participate after all the morning's confusion. Margot knelt down to the child's level, her artist's mind already forming a plan. "Hey there," she said softly in Spanish, remembering lines from her language lessons. "Would you like to be my special assistant today? I need someone brave and smart to help me make this the most magical wedding ever." Maria's eyes widened with interest, and she nodded slowly. Margot continued, "I heard you're going to throw flower petals. You know what? That's exactly like sprinkling fairy dust. And when you do it, it helps everyone understand each other better, just like magic." The little girl's face lit up, and suddenly Margot had not just a flower girl, but an enthusiastic co-host who could help bridge the cultural divide with her innocent charm. As the guests began to arrive, Margot took a deep breath and smoothed her white linen dress, which, by some stroke of luck, looked perfectly appropriate for a beach wedding coordinator. She caught her reflection in a nearby window and almost laughed at the situation. Here she was, an Oscar-nominated actress, about to put on the most important performance of her life, and not a single person in the audience knew they were about to witness something extraordinary. Little did she know that her next split-second decision would not only save the ceremony but turn it into something none of the guests would ever forget, especially once they finally realized who their mysterious wedding coordinator really was. The ceremony was scheduled to begin at 10 a.m., and the morning sun had risen higher, casting a golden glow over the beach. Margot stood at the front of the gathering, her entertainment industry experience kicking in as she assessed the scene before her. The guests were seated, a gentle breeze carried the salt air around them, and the acoustic guitarist was ready with his rendition of "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," a nod to both the groom's Pacific heritage and the couple's shared love of the ocean. What happened next would later be described by guests as the most entertainingly chaotic yet heartwarming wedding they'd ever attended. Margot began with a warm smile and a greeting in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and her best attempt at a Maori welcome she remembered from a New Zealand film premiere. The latter earned appreciative murmurs from the groom's family, even if her pronunciation wasn't perfect. She then did something unexpected. She asked everyone to close their eyes. "Feel the sun on your face," she guided them, her voice carrying the same captivating quality that had commanded movie screens worldwide. "Listen to the waves. No matter where we're from, no matter what language we speak, we all understand the language of love and nature." As the guests opened their eyes, little Maria started her walk down the aisle, but instead of simply dropping flower petals, she was spinning and dancing, encouraged by Margot's earlier pep talk about fairy dust. The unexpected choreography drew delighted laughter from both sides of the aisle, immediately breaking the tension. Then came the first real challenge. The groom's grandfather had prepared a traditional Maori blessing, but the translator was struggling with the cultural nuances. Margot, drawing on her years of script analysis and character work, caught the essence of the elder's body language and tone. She began to mirror his gestures as she translated, not just his words but his intentions, turning the blessing into a performance that transcended language. The ceremony hit a snag when the unity sand wouldn't pour properly. The humidity had caused it to clump. Without missing a beat, Margot channeled her quick thinking from years of live TV appearances. She improvised a story about how love, like sand, sometimes needs a little help to flow freely. As she spoke, she discreetly helped the couple tap their sand containers in rhythm with her words, turning the potential awkward moment into what appeared to be a planned metaphor about patience and partnership. When it came time for the vows, Elena began to cry, overwhelmed by emotion and struggling to find her English words. Margot stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Take your time," she said softly, then turned to the guests. "You know, I once heard that happy tears are the best kind of universal translation." This drew knowing laughs and nods from everyone present, giving the bride a moment to compose herself. But the real turning point came during the ring exchange. As Margot was explaining the significance of the rings, which she'd cleverly tied into both cultures' traditions, a sudden gust of wind sent her wide-brimmed hat flying. Without thinking, she caught it with the same quick reflexes she developed during her action movie training, spinning it back onto her head with a flourish that would have made her Barbie choreographers proud. The move was so smooth, so unexpectedly graceful, that it caught the attention of one of the younger guests, a teenage girl who had seen Barbie multiple times. Margot could see the moment of recognition dawn on the girl's face, her eyes widening in disbelief. But before the teen could say anything, Margot gave her a tiny wink and pressed a finger to her lips, turning the moment into their shared secret. The girl's expression shifted from shock to pure joy as she realized she was part of something extraordinary. She nodded back, understanding that this moment wasn't about the famous actress Margot Robbie, it was about Elena and James, and their beautiful union of cultures and hearts. As the ceremony progressed, Margot's natural charm and theatrical training transformed what could have been a disconnected bilingual event into an interactive celebration. She had the Argentine guests teach the New Zealanders to say amor while the Kiwis shared their word aroha, creating a moment of connection that had everyone smiling and repeating the words, barriers dissolving in the warm Miami sun. What none of the guests yet knew was that the most remarkable part of this unusual wedding was still to come, a reception that would prove that sometimes the best moments in life are the ones you never saw coming. The beach ceremony transitioned into a reception at the hotel's oceanfront terrace, and Margot found herself fully embracing her role as the impromptu wedding coordinator. She had already memorized key guests' names and relationships, a skill honed through years of managing complex film sets and press tours. What she hadn't anticipated was how much she would enjoy being mistaken for a regular person, albeit one who was unusually good at handling a crowd. The first crack in her cover came during the cocktail hour. The teenage girl who had recognized her earlier was whispering excitedly to her cousins, pointing discreetly in Margot's direction. Phones were slowly being pulled out of pockets and purses, not to take typical wedding photos, but to Google images of a certain Hollywood actress and make subtle comparisons. Margot noticed the mounting recognition but stayed focused on her duties. She was directing the serving staff, coordinating with the DJ, and ensuring the photographer captured every special moment. She had just finished helping the bride's grandmother find her seat when she overheard a conversation in rapid-fire Spanish. "I'm telling you, it's her. No way, why would Margot Robbie be hosting our cousin's wedding? But look at her. The way she moves, the way she speaks. Maybe she's just a look-alike? There are professional impersonators." The whispers were spreading like wildfire through the reception, but in an unexpectedly charming way. Instead of causing a disruption, it added an element of magical uncertainty to the celebration. Guests from both families found themselves bonding over their shared theories, pulling up movie clips on their phones and debating in a mixture of English, Spanish, and Maori. The situation reached a turning point during the traditional speeches. Margot had been translating and hosting, adding her own theatrical flair to keep everyone engaged. When it came time for the bride and groom's dance, she had an idea that would either blow her cover completely or make the wedding utterly unforgettable, probably both. She approached the DJ and whispered something in his ear. Then, she took the microphone and addressed the crowd. In the spirit of bringing our cultures together, we're going to teach everyone a very special dance. Some of you might recognize it. The opening notes of Dance the Night from the Barbie movie began to play. The bride's eyes went wide with recognition, and the teenage girl who had first spotted Margot nearly fell out of her chair. Margot began leading the guests through the choreography she knew by heart, but with a twist. She incorporated elements of traditional Argentine tango and Maori haka movements, creating a unique fusion that had everyone laughing and dancing together. As she demonstrated the moves, her professional training was impossible to hide. Each step was too precise, each movement too polished for a regular wedding coordinator. The bride's younger brother, an aspiring filmmaker, was recording everything on his phone, his hands shaking with excitement as he realized what he was documenting. But it was Maria, the little flower girl, who finally broke the spell. During the dance, she tugged on her mother's dress and announced loudly in Spanish, "Mama, I'm dancing with Barbie. The real Barbie." Her pure, innocent excitement cut through any remaining doubt. Margot's eyes met Elena's across the dance floor. The bride was beaming, tears of joy streaming down her face as she realized that her wedding emergency had turned into something extraordinary. James, the groom, was laughing in disbelief, finally understanding why their last-minute replacement had handled everything with such professional poise. Instead of the chaos that might have ensued from a celebrity revelation, something remarkable happened. The guests, perhaps taking their cue from Margot's dedication to keeping the focus on the couple, turned this surprising discovery into another layer of the celebration rather than letting it overshadow the wedding itself. As the sun began to set over Miami Beach, casting a rosy glow over the reception, Margot knew it was time for the final act of this unexpected performance, one that would ensure this wedding would be remembered not just as the day a Hollywood star showed up, but as the day two families truly became one, with a little help from an unlikely fairy godmother in a white linen dress. As the evening drew to a close, Margot found herself sitting at a table with Elena and James, all three of them sharing a moment of quiet laughter over how the day had unfolded. The reception was still in full swing, with guests from both families dancing together, taking photos, and sharing stories about how they'd each slowly realized who their mystery wedding coordinator really was. "I knew something was different about you," Elena admitted, her accent thick with emotion. "But I thought maybe you were just the most amazing wedding planner in Miami." She reached over and squeezed Margot's hand. "Instead, you were an angel who walked out of the ocean exactly when we needed one." James, who had been relatively quiet throughout the evening, cleared his throat. "You know, when everything started going wrong this morning, I thought it was a bad omen. Now I realize it was the opposite." He smiled at his bride. How many couples can say Margot Robbie not only crashed their wedding but saved it? Margot shook her head, feeling genuinely touched. "Actually, I think you two saved my day. I was trying to find some peace and quiet, but what I really needed was to be reminded of why I fell in love with performing in the first place, to bring joy to people and make real connections." The moment was interrupted by Maria, the flower girl, who had been gathering courage all evening to ask for a special request. She approached their table clutching a small Barbie doll in a wedding dress. "Can you sign my Barbie?" she asked in Spanish, then added carefully in English, "Please, fairy godmother." Margot's heart melted. She took the doll and borrowed a pen from James. Instead of just signing her name, she wrote a small message, "To Maria, thank you for helping me spread magic today. Love, your fairy godmother, and Barbie." As the night progressed, Margot did something unexpected. She asked the videographer to help her record personal messages from guests in all 3 languages, creating a multilingual tribute to the couple's love story. She even taught the photographer some tricks she'd learned from working with Hollywood cinematographers, ensuring the sunset photos would be absolutely stunning. The final surprise came when it was time for the last dance. Margot took the microphone one more time, but instead of making an announcement, she began to sing, a gentle, acoustic version of What Was I Made For, that she'd performed during the Barbie press tour. As she sang, Elena and James swayed on the dance floor, while their families joined hands in a circle around them, creating a moment that felt both intimately personal and cinematically perfect. Before leaving, Margot pulled Sophia, the bridesmaid who had first mistaken her for a Barbie event coordinator, aside. "You know," she said with a conspiratorial wink, "I think the real wedding coordinator would love to know how everything turned out." She handed Sophia her personal email address. "Send me the photos and video when you get them. And tell Amanda she owes me one." The story of the wedding spread quickly across social media in the following days, but not in the way celebrity stories usually do. Instead of focusing on Margot's presence, most posts talked about how a twist of fate had turned a potential disaster into a celebration of love that transcended languages and cultures. The viral video of the multilingual dance lesson became a trending wedding trend, with couples around the world incorporating the fusion of dance the night with their own cultural traditions. Months later, Elena and James received a special delivery, a custom-made wedding album, courtesy of Margot's production company. Inside was a note that read, "Some performances deserve to be remembered forever. Thank you for letting me be part of your love story." The final page of the album featured a photo that captured the essence of that magical day: Margot, Elena, James, and little Maria all making heart shapes with their hands against the setting sun, their shadows stretching across the Miami sand. Below it was written in 3 languages, "Love needs no translation." And somewhere in Hollywood, Margot kept a small memento of her own, a single grain of sand from the ceremony, sealed in a tiny glass bottle on her desk. It served as a reminder that sometimes the most authentic roles are the ones we never auditioned for, and that real magic happens when we step out of our own story and into someone else's.
Tell us in the comments what part of this story impressed you the most. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the world of incredible events.